We will spend a little bit about a sneak peek into how AI, or rather AI and generative AI can be applied to the insurance business. Obviously, 30 minutes it's going to be a sneak peek. We will introduce you to some of the concepts and how we are thinking about application into reinsurance business. Myself, Dinesh Kalidas, I head up insurance consulting for LTI Mindtree. Been in the industry for about a couple of decades. What we're going to cover today is some of the basic concepts and then get into some of the possibilities in the reinsurance space. With me, Prakash. Prakash, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you, Dinesh. Good morning, everybody. I'm Prakash Vidantam. I work as a principal director in the insurance strategy and advisory group at LTI Mindtree. So today, we both are going to discuss about how AI and Gen AI, using AI and Gen AI, we can reimagine the reinsurance business. So to start with, I just want to just so everybody is on the same page. I know everybody got introduced to AI and Gen AI concepts over the last couple of days, but we'll just give a quick overview. To start with, a lot of these expert systems started with automated underwriting, right, and straight-through processing. So then came the evolution of unsupervised learning, where algorithms were used to segment customers or classify customers actually, and associate products, things like that. And then later came supervised learning, right, where you kind of develop some models and use data to train those models and predict certain outcomes, right? And then came deep learning. So we are all familiar with image analysis or natural language processing. So that train has passed now. Now came generative AI. So where we are generating content now, be it text content or images or videos. So those are all generated using Gen AI. Now the latest advancement of application of this generative AI is agentic workflows, right? So where agentic workflows come into picture is imagine an agent certain agent collaborating to accomplish a certain workflow, right, without human intervention actually. And a lot of these agentic workflows rely on human feedback, because we are still kind of in the early stages of this adoption. So there is human involvement still involved, but there is automated workflows agents collaborate on different tasks. So I'll invite Dinesh to cover some of the use cases here on the agentic AI.
Yeah, sure. Let's make it a little real, right? So Prakash touched upon a few concepts, and we spoke about the whole evolution running up to agentic workflows, right? So we'll talk about two examples here predominantly. One, looking at more operational application of AI and agentic workflows, and second is extending this further to some of the decision-making process that we'll do, which will be the next example that we will speak about, right? So agentic workflows is all about bringing agents which perform various tasks fairly autonomously, intelligently, and with little or no human intervention, right? So let's take I think most of us are now used to the fact that now we are applying AI and generative AI to extract information from documents. We think it all started with OCR, went into traditional AI-based extraction tools. Now we are applying generative AI to extract information. But the technology that's working behind is understanding the content, understanding the documents, be it you are extracting information from your emails, you are extracting information from your record forms, your loss runs, your financial statements, etc., right? It requires you to understand the context of the information that is there in the document, understand the context and relate it to the target attributes or information that you want to extract and pull out that information. And why do we call it agentic AI? And typically, if you look at an example, let's take commercial insurance for example, right? You are extracting information from multiple sources. So you might be extracting from an email, you might be extracting from an accord form, you might be extracting, and same information sometimes might be available on all these different documents. So you're extracting from multiple sources. Now, not just that, post extraction, if you are getting the same information from multiple sources, which source is prioritized, which source has to be prioritized. So there's a decision making that is involved. And this decision making could be rule driven, could be AI driven. For example, do you need to pick your broker name, your agency name and their address from the broker form, or do you need to pick it from the email? Do you need to pick it from the accord form? You could use a rule. You could say pick it from the broker form, for example. But you could also look at it and say, hey, I will pick it from the broker form, but when it comes to address, maybe the address on the email is not complete. So you will use AI to make it a more comprehensive, combined, merged information. So that's why we are calling this agentic, because it's accomplishing the task of extracting information, comparing and prioritizing information and making it complete, and doing all of that to a target set of information that we want to pick. This is an operational application. Now let's take another example. Let's take, all of you might be familiar in the insurance industry with clearance activity. Now clearance for many of us might look like, it's a straightforward search on an account name or a straightforward search on submission attributes and trying to figure out whether that's a duplicate submission or whether that is a conflict of business coming through from another broker, right? But where do we apply AI and agentic AI for this, right? So this comparison need not always be foolproof. For example, you could get your customer name wrong. It could be spelled wrong on the form. A match may not work. You may consider this as not a perfect match. So you use fuzzy matching algorithms using AI, which helps you to determine a score of how well the match is. And based on that match and based on the threshold score, you could have AI take decisions whether I should categorize this as a near perfect match, I should categorize this as a partial match, I should categorize this as a no match. Now again, these decisions lead you to things as to whether this is an automated decision around clearance or you give it to a human in the loop for actually taking a decision. Now again, these are operational applications, and many of us are familiar because we have started doing proof of concepts. Some of them have started doing production examples of that. But if we want to extend this analogy and we want to really take it to decision making activities that we are doing, think of our underwriters, think of somebody doing a reinsurance program design and validation, right? So we took to the next example, wherein we are still talking about an orchestrated process, but an orchestrated process that can feed into a decision making. So what are the activities involved in such an orchestrated process? Now any predictive model or any summarization that you might want to do, you need to be preparing data that is required for these models. And let's take an example. Let's say you want to kind of predict. You get a submission, you want to predict how likely is this submission likely to bind. Okay, should I prioritize this? Should I prioritize over and above another submission, right? Now if I want to do this, I need to really be able to model based on my own data, what is the prediction model going to look like? And if I'm going to use, there are a whole heap of predictive models out there. You could use a decision tree, and we will show you an example. What you would get is a rule output which predicts what can happen based on certain influencing parameters. That's your second step. Your second step could also be summarizing data based on a series of dimensions and facts. For example, the probability to bind could be a fact. You could be using influencing parameters like industry classifications, revenue bands, and so on and so forth as dimensions. Now this is still traditional AI. So the second step is traditional AI. Now then comes the ability of generative AI. Now for example, I have a submission which belongs to a certain industry. Let's assume that this is a technology company. Now I want to understand a narrative on what decision should I be taking with this submission. Now that's where generative AI comes in. It looks at what the predictive model has given and what is the context of your submission, and it generates a narrative which can support your decision making. And I will show you a quick example of this. It's a busy slide. I kept it simple to kind of explain what we are trying to do. Now look at this example. I've taken an example which all of us can relate to, which is propensity to bind. Which is propensity to bind. And we have taken certain parameters. In real world, these influencing attributes could be running into hundreds, right? But we have taken a simple set of example of 10 odd attributes. And what we are saying is, if I feed in data to a predictive model to help me understand based on these influencing attributes, what is the chance that this submission will bind, right? So it's giving me an output, and depending upon, I could use different supervised learning. We have taken an example of a decision tree algorithm. If you're using a decision tree, now what you're seeing is the first two nodes of a decision tree. This runs into pages. Just to illustrate what you have done, we are generating a decision tree which predicts what is the chance that the given submission will bind. Now comes the next case. Think of us as an underwriter, right? You're sitting there, you've got a new submission. The submission is a technology company which belongs to technology industry class, a revenue of 100 million, and this is a facultative submission. So you have certain retention characteristics and reinsurance limits defined as part of the submission. Now you have to sift through the decision tree rules and then come up with a narrative, right? A narrative which tells that what is the likelihood of this submission binding or not binding, right? And why are you thinking so? This is almost like an underwriter sitting there trying to reason with the data, trying to figure out what the decision should be, and also trying to get a rationale out of it. This is still not taking decisions on behalf of the underwriter, but think of this as an augmentation of what the underwriter has to do, right? And this is kind of making it so simple for the underwriter to not just get a predictive model, but also get reasoning for his or her context, with the context getting to a decision, and then also getting an explanation and a rationale for that decision. Now we took two examples. The first one, we took an operational example of a clearance process and an extraction process and an ingestion process. Second, we took a kind of a decision making example where we had to explain, take data, predict outcomes, generate explanations and narratives based on predicting outcomes. Now the second step can also be an aggregation. You could aggregate information, you could aggregate, for example, your exposure values. You could get an explanation out of that using generative AI, and that's the power. So when Prakash started, he spoke about the traditional AI and then the generative AI. The difference is we use traditional AI for classification and supervised learning, building these models, etc. And then we are using generative AI to narrate content, to generate explanation of the decisions that you might take based on information available from the predictions that have been generated. Okay. Now with these two examples, we will deep dive into a few use cases, not necessarily deep dive, but give you a bird's eye view of some of the use cases where this can be applied. Now obviously this can be applied in a seeding company, which is a primary carrier. This can be applied by a facultative reinsurer writing facultative business. This could be applied by a portfolio reinsurer writing portfolio business. And here is a few examples. Okay, the first one what we have taken is, we have taken a facultative reinsurer. Facultative business in a lot of sense looks very similar to the primary insurance business in terms of the process, because you're still underwriting as individual risk. The only fact that your risk is associated to the layer that you are trying to write, so you have to associate layer characteristics in addition to the primary risk characteristics that you will be interested in. So what are some of the things that we can do? Again, this is by no means exhaustive. This is a 30-minute session. We wanted to kind of introduce you to a concept. We wanted to kind of give you some view into what are some of the things that you can think about, and we can obviously expand on this. The first three I will skip because that's the example I gave you from an operational perspective, which is clearance, appetite check, propensity to bind, and extraction of information as well, which is not there on this slide. Okay. Now let's take the fourth bullet, coverages assessment, right? Having got a set of coverages as part of the submission, I can do two things, right? One, based on my own assessment of similar kind of risks which I have done in the past, I can come to a conclusion whether I have accepted these coverages in the past, I have accepted with the same terms as has been sought, I have modified the terms, etc. That is one. Second is, I could also make a judgment about whether the coverages that are being sought, are they reasonably covering the risk that is involved. Now, the difference that we are doing here is, this whole modeling is based on an insurer's or a reinsurer's own data. So this is intelligence coming out of their own data, and that's what we are trying to predict in terms of what is the prediction of coverages held, and hence what is the kind of coverages that a given submission should have or should not have. Right. Similarly, look at the entire submission. Look at the exposures, the kind of coverages, the kind of perils that have been asked for. What is the insured values? Get a quick summarization of your exposures, which helps you do a quick exposure analysis. Similarly, I'm not going to each of these bullets. You can do experience analysis. You can do an analysis of the insured experience. You can compare it with similar class of insurers in the similar class of business. You can look at validation of the reinsurance proposal terms, like for example, what is the type of reinsurance that has been sought, what is the limits that have been sought, what is the retention, right, and what is the reinsurance share in this retention. And similarly, you can look at pricing decisions, right? You can look at whether if it is a quota share or a proportional kind of things, how do you determine your profit sharing commissions or profit sharing ceding commissions rather, or you can look at exposure based pricing, or you can look at experience based pricing, and you can derive whatever we spoke about from a decision making purpose, how you can look at usage of different classes of AI, bring them together in an agentic workflow, and kind of determine and help underwriters get a narrative, right? It's not just throwing a model at them. It's about giving the model, and based on the context in their hand, giving them a narrative of what is the decision they are taking and why they should be taking a decision, right? I will now hand it over to Prakash to speak a little about similar application in treaty business. Prakash?
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Dinesh. Yeah. So in the treaty reinsurance, as you know, it is. So we are looking at this use case from a reinsurer point of view, where the primary insurer provides a lot of data, like premium by line or premium by geography or location, and the loss history, the rate change history, like past 5 years data. So they would be kind of providing this kind of information. Now, where we can apply agentic framework is, if you look at the data set that is here, there are 3 types of data actually. One, there is the premium and loss kind of information. So where you can use the traditional AI methods actually to analyze the data, and then you can apply on the rate change history, some kind of trend analysis. So the traditional analysis that can be done, and you would also get financial statements and prior treaty contracts. So this is where Gen AI can come in and summarize the financials for the last 5 years, right? And also the treaty terminology, what was the clauses that were used in the last 5 years, how they have changed. So Gen AI can easily kind of summarize rather than an underwriter kind of going through and sifting through all that information actually. So and where this agentic framework can come into picture is, there could be 3 different agents that could work in collaboration. So one could do the traditional AI analysis of this premium, another could do the analysis of losses, and another agent can do the summarization of these prior treaty terms, and then they can collaborate. There can be orchestration on top of it, which will kind of provide summarization on whether you can get some inputs on what are the treaty terms that can be used actually for the renewal, or what are the reinsurance layer limits, right? And what is the share that the reinsurance company can take up actually, and also kind of design the reinsurance clauses, right? So all that information can be provided as output. And similarly, from a pricing point of view also, it can the agents can because it has the premium and the losses information, so it can provide some guidance on the rate adequacy, whether the earned premium is sufficient, or it can provide some guidance to the underwriters on what the ceding commission should be, and it can also kind of provide analysis on the loss and the trending of the losses actually. So it can provide all the guidance to the underwriter in an easy consumable manner, so that like the manual effort can be significantly reduced actually. I mean, this all kind of will be in the context of human in the loop. It is augmenting the underwriter taking decisions and providing information that is relevant for them by consuming like lots of data actually. So, like we have 3 more minutes. We'll quickly, so this is a edge to core platform ecosystem and a reference architecture for this, right? So whatever we have discussed about the agentic framework and how different components come together, so this is a reference architecture, and we have built like certain use cases of these as part of our technology demonstration actually. Like for example, if I take the bottom layer, right, the foundation framework, it will have like role-based access control, quality audit, all the nuts and bolts like bells and whistles that are needed for the foundation model to work. And on top of that, you have like fine-tuned LLM. And here we are calling this as Wingman, which is kind of a engine like that supports the underwriter. And this, why we are calling this as fine-tuned LLM is the foundation models, like it is trained on generic data, right? Now, if you want the LLM to understand the reinsurance domain, so we build like knowledge graphs, and we have been training these LLMs with the insurance policy context or the coverage context or the reinsurance context using the knowledge graphs that we build, so that we can intelligently query the LLMs and get the output within the context of the reinsurance actually. So, and that's where this fine tuning is coming into picture, and these fine-tuned LLMs are used by the agents actually, okay? And you see here the process and agent orchestration. So we have like all these agents are available as functional modules, and these can be invoked via APIs through a product like Sapiens SRM, for example, right? So let's say if somebody is doing an appetite check, so instead of an underwriter manually doing that, so they can invoke an API, and that API will call this agent, and it does these actions and feed back the data or the summary of the outcome for the underwriter to consume. And all of these information can be provided through user engagement, right? And this is where the Copilot framework will come into picture, where you have like widgets like Ask Me Anything, right? Or some could be like in the part of the workflow itself, they are invoked as APIs, and some could be provided as Copilots, like where they can type in like in a conversational language their question and they can get an answer actually. So similarly, you have like Dinesh covered the intake management. So there are certain components that help with this particular process. And this agentic workflow here, it can invoke like multiple AI agents. So these could be like LLM agents, or these could be rule agents for prioritizing certain decisions actually, or this could be like the fuzzy matching agent that Dinesh covered in the clearance check actually. And these could be other enterprise agents or third-party agents actually, where the agents can make a call to external system, get the data, enrich and help make the decisions. So this is the reference architecture, and we have built like certain use cases as well. So this is the last slide. Okay, so will not be between you and lunch. So this is our LTI Mindtree's approach for AI, right? So our strategy is like AI in everything we do, and everything in AI, and AI for everyone. So AI in everything is like basically like whatever engineering work we do, we leverage like AI, like be it like copilots and the examples that we talked about, the Wingman or the fine-tuned LLMs. So we are kind of building those blocks for different COTS products actually. So this is something that is a work in progress. And everything in AI is like where we are bringing in agentic workflows, where we are whatever agents we have built, whatever components we have built, we are bringing together that functionality in whatever in every workflow like aspects, right? So we kind of combining those solution blocks to achieve a business outcome. And finally, AI for everyone. So this is like persona-based solutions, like let's say a smart underwriting solution. So it could be, it is geared towards like maybe a primary insurer like underwriter, or it could be for a underwriter from a reinsurance company. So, and also similarly a smart intake management, right? So these are like business solutions that are available for certain personas actually. And these are certain examples of like the art of possible and what we have, and some of them are kind of available as demos actually, so which we can demonstrate some aspects of it actually. So you can come to our booth like for a demo of this.
Thank you. And if you have any questions, happy to take those questions.
Are you integrated with any of the Sapiens products right now?
Yeah. So right now so we have integrated with Sapiens Policy Pro from a underwriting point of view. So where we are able to extract information from emails or unstructured documents and identify the intent and take action on policy actually. So we are further working towards extending these to reinsurance scenarios as well. So we are working on getting the sandbox for Reinsurance Pro, but we have implemented this and we can show a demo as well for the Policy Pro.
What's policy do?
Are you doing the same for Reinsurance Master?
Yes.
What is the timeline for that?
I mean, the same can be extended actually, so the building blocks are already there. So it is just a matter of getting the sandbox, so we are working with Sapiens team on that. But we have all the building blocks which we have used for Policy Pro, same things can be applied actually. I mean, from a time frame point of view, like we have built this particular solution like for like maybe within 1 to 2 months I would say. From a, yeah, we can easily extend that to reinsurance matter.
So, thank you.